join a little bit, but what I'm going to talk about today is my most recent stool test and what the results were, and I'm so excited to share them with you. I know it sounds so weird, doesn't it? But this is so funny because every time I talk about poo, people are like, this is an awesome conversation because no one talks about it. And this is literally what I specialize in, gut health and stool testing. So I'm all about it. You guys got questions, send them my way. So what I'm going to share with you today is my most recent test results. And this is being a little vulnerable because as a coach and as a practitioner, obviously you want to be perfect. You want to be the example. You want to be the leader. You want to be the demonstration that I have the perfect diet, I live the best lifestyle, and here's how you can too, right? And I have done my utmost over the past 5-6 years to incorporate healthy habits into my own life and my family's life, and a lot has improved. So let me just start there and say I have more energy, better sleep. Like, let me back up for a second. Energy is a huge deal. Energy is the whole reason I got into this in the first place. I knew at like 24 years old, before I was getting married to Patrick, that the fact that I dipped in energy and had to crash in the middle of the afternoon was not normal. And so I couldn't get up in the mornings. I would come home and I would crash totally for like hours at a time and just feel like almost like narcoleptic. Like I have to sleep right now. Like there's no controlling this. Like I need to go to bed. So thankfully, this happened young enough that I did not say, hi, Emily. I did not say, oh, this is age related. I was able to say, hey, this is actually a legitimate problem and I need to figure out what it is. So energy, hi, Amanda. Energy was like the big thing for me in the beginning. And that's what ended up sort of spurring on, my search to figure out what's the underlying cause. Is it hormones? Is it this? Is it that? Like what's happening? So then I looked into my hormones and then I got into my FDN certification and focused on the gut. And then now, this is what's crazy, you guys. My process started in 2012 with fatigue. Then I had a complete and what I consider an utter breakdown in 2015 where I had intrusive thoughts. I was crying every day. I had insomnia for 2 straight weeks. I'm amazed that my loving husband didn't totally put me in a psychiatric ward and say, I can't handle you. He was patient. He was kind. We worked through it. We got out of the acute, scary phase. But during that time, my doctor wanted to put me on an antidepressant, and I knew that wasn't the problem. I knew enough at that time that that wasn't the issue. I didn't know what was actually going on. I didn't know what the underlying cause was. I didn't have the information that I have today, but I did know enough to know that I did not want to go on an antidepressant. That's all I knew in 2015. I knew that I was eating well and I knew that I could get through this, but I didn't know what was happening to me. Well, turns out, here we are 3 years later, and it's taken a full year of me actually incorporating functional lab testing and test, don't guess philosophy to actually uncover the root. We're just now getting to the root cause of what's happening. So one of the things I kind of wanted to share was this is a journey. So if someone has chronic health conditions, whether it be an autoimmune disease, whether it be GI dysfunction, anxiety, fatigue, hormone imbalances, this usually happens over the course of many years due to chronic stress, whether it be mental, emotional, whether it be due to acute stressors like trauma, divorce, whether it be from some physical stressors like putting your body through long bouts of antibiotics that wipe out your gut microbiome, whether it be physical stress in terms of like your heavy, hardcore CrossFitter, hi Amanda, anything like that. And so chronic stress then breaks down your body's ability to function properly, because when your body is focused on putting out a major fire over here, one of the top 2 things that normally go first are your body's fertility ability, and your digestion. And so many women struggle with their hormone imbalances and digestion kind of cohesively at the same time, and I know I did as well. So my initial journey was, let me look at my hormones, and then as I sort of progressed and got some support and got out of that acute phase of terror, which is all I can use to explain that time of my life, I did not know what was going on. It was awful. But once I sort of got out of that acute phase and started getting my FDN certification and started doing functional lab testing, I started understanding this whole concept of this took a while to manifest. I had chronic stress in my life for probably 10 years. I had childhood trauma. I had adult trauma through a divorce. I had use of many antibiotics, and the year before my breakdown, I had probably gone through 3 or 4 rounds of antibiotics because of UTIs that I would get chronically. I had been on birth control for a short period of time in my early 20s, all these things. So when I look back knowing what I know now, and I had had a garbage diet in college, let's just throw that out there. So when I look back now at all the things that sort of piled up to break my body down in terms of what leads to gut dysfunction, leaky gut, and hormone imbalances, I'm amazed that it took that long for me to have such severe issues. Let's just put it that way. So anyways, through this process, I ended up getting some stool testing. Well, as many of you know, if you followed me for a couple years now, and I've shared it on YouTube, and I've shared it on my Facebook, and I've shared it through live videos, I had H. pylori. That's one of the things that came up. By the way, let's back up just a second. The hormone testing I got originally, or in my early 20s, demonstrated that I had postmenopausal level hormones. So that's how bad this was, okay? So what was going on was affecting my hormones. And when your body is stressed for any reason, your hormones are not important. So typically, hormones tend to be secondary, especially if you're young. If you're in your 20s and 30s and things aren't working right, like why? You know, if you're in your 50s, 60s, maybe you've had a hysterectomy. I mean, there's usually some things going on there, right? But if you're young and your hormones aren't balancing right, what's the underlying cause? Because your body's meant to work properly. So it's usually focused on something else. So in a lot of cases, hi Taylor, in a lot of cases, this points to some sort of inflammation in the body. And inflammation typically starts in the gut. And it might sound so incredibly simple, and it is, but focusing on the gut can help so many things because your neurotransmitters are located in your gut. So brain health, right? Your mood. Your immune system is located in your gut. So your ability to fight off infections. Your microbiome, obviously you have this huge gut population of good and bad bacteria in there. Your hormones are highly regulated in your gut. So you have all these things that basically if your gut is not functioning correctly, if there's damage, if there's inflammation, you can have mood disorders, you can have brain cognition problems, you can have hormone imbalances, you can have bloating, you can have all these different things. You can have skin issues. I mean, it's crazy to think about, but really a lot of times you only need to really actually focus on one thing, and that's what's happening in your gut. So I started getting these stool tests, and I started finding out like what are the underlying causes that I might have some imbalanced hormones or some chronic, GI issues like bloating. I used to bloat out all the time and all this kind of stuff. So last year, the first test that I did was a BioHealth 401H, which is a stool test, and it said that I had H. pylori. So I went to work. I did my protocol, and I was like on it, okay? And I also tested my husband because it is very common to pass it on through saliva, and you can share glasses and things like that, and so that's how H. pylori can sort of transfer from human to human very easily. In fact, over 50% of the population has it. So I tested my husband, right? So he has it, I have it. So we both go on a protocol, and this is the funny part. Of course, me being me, the practitioner and the person that got into this in the first place, I have a hard time getting rid of my H. pylori, and my husband does like this, kind of half-assed version of the protocol, and he knocks it out and try number 1. I get retested, I still have it. I was like, what are the odds? But it makes sense because I'm the one that's been working on chronic health conditions for years, right? So I go back to it, and there were a couple things that I could add into my protocol in terms of I wasn't changing out my toothbrush regularly. I needed to include coffee enemas to help my body detoxify. I definitely needed to do a gallbladder flush because H. pylori specifically can crawl up into your gallbladder, and you can target as many as you want in your system, but when that protocol is done, if they're in your gallbladder, they can proliferate and come right back out, and that is no fun because you just went through this protocol. So this time I was like, I'm not drinking coffee, I'm not providing an environment for them to live in. Hi Jenny, I'm going to do whatever it takes. And if you guys know me, I'm super hardcore, I'm super black and white, so I did. I added all these different layers and I did it again. And happy day, my H. pylori is gone. So let's celebrate. But that's not all. So really quickly, I want to backtrack and be like, why do you want to get rid of H. pylori? If over 50% of the population has it and they don't know it, some people may have symptoms, some people may not. If you have symptoms, you're probably not going to associate them with H. pylori. One, because most of us don't even know what that means. But also because, I'm just going to adjust this, sorry, because they're random symptoms. Like, for example, achiness in the middle of your back between your shoulder blades. That sounds so weird, but that can be H. pylori. Bloating and gas and all these things that we associate with other stuff, or we think maybe it's the food we're eating, acid reflux, stomach pains, things like that. Now, the reason you want to get rid of H. pylori is because the longer you have it, the more likely you are to have symptoms, and the longer you have it and the worse it is, the more likely you are to actually have things like cancer and stomach ulcers. H. pylori is like the #1 cause of stomach ulcers in this country. So it's kind of important that you want them to be in check. It's not that you're going to eliminate them 100%, like every single little bug, but you need to get them down to the point where they don't show up on a test, and you need to build up the good bacteria so that if you're ever exposed, you have the stomach acid and the good bacteria to protect you in the future. So you want to protect your gut lining, you want to get rid of these little suckers. So thankfully on the second try, I did. But then I got my stool test back, and this is where I'm really excited, because at this time, now I'm able, because this is gone and this is gone, I can start pulling back the layers, and now I'm seeing on this stool test what's actually going on underneath. So when I say what's going on underneath, why did it take me like 3 years to figure this out? Well, first of all, I only started the functional lab testing about a year ago, and you don't test constantly, right? You kind of focus on one thing and then you retest and you focus. So it's kind of a drawn out thing. But secondly, let me just kind of give you one of the most fascinating facts about bacteria and parasites. They are resilient. They like to live, and they are very good at it. So what do? They build this little thing called a biofilm that's sort of like this spider web in your gut. It's so disgusting. Google it. And basically, it's how they protect themselves. So they're very, 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 very good at hiding in your gut. They create this little film to protect themselves. They bury themselves in it, and it protects them like hardcore. So when people ask, okay, can't you just, change your gut microbiome with food and, nutrition and all this kind of stuff? Yes, there's a tremendous amount that you can do. Hi, Emily. There is a tremendous amount that you can do through nutrition, and fiber feeds your good bacteria, and that's absolutely, regardless of what you do, nutrition is always the foundation, right? But if you have other things that are pathogenic and opportunistic, maybe you have some yeast growing or you have some parasites, it is incredibly difficult and certain pathogens impossible to target only with nutrition and lifestyle. So when people ask me things like that, no, you have to do two things. You have to break up that biofilm that they live in, and you can't just do that through food. And you have to actually target them to eliminate them. You can't do that through food. So it's really, really important if you find things like this on a stool test that you do want to get rid of them. So let's talk about mine, shall we? I get rid of my H. pylori, yay, thank goodness, and I go ahead and run a comprehensive stool test. Sorry, I sit on my feet, and then they get numb, so then I have to shift around and sit on the other one. So I'm sorry, it makes for a horrible video, but that's how I sit, and now you know. So I run a comprehensive stool test called the GI Map from Diagnostic Solutions, that lab, and that's part of what I do through my FDN practice. And if you are a client, or if you're thinking about becoming a client and you choose to run the stool test, this is the one you would run. The reason I like this one, and if you remember, I ran the BioHealth 401 originally, which screened for my H. pylori. I switched over to the GI Map because it's way, 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 way comprehensive, and it gives me so many more tools to work with. So it gives me a much bigger picture in terms of what's going on in there. And so I really, really love this one, and this is the one I now use for myself, my family, and my clients. So what did we find? Who wants to guess? Guess, you guys. Quick, quick, quick. Post something. Who wants to guess what we found? Any ideas whatsoever? Any ideas? Hi, Suanna. Any idea what was on this test at all? Nobody's guessing? Nobody has an idea? I'll give you an idea. It wasn't good. Okay, so I found that I had, count them, 3. Hi, Abigail. 3 parasites. So just to reiterate, these little suckers like to live. Also, bacteria, parasites, yeast, fungi, they all like to eat and live off and thrive off each other, okay? So if you ever wonder, why am I not absorbing the nutrients that I eat? I eat the healthiest diet in the world, and I'm tired all the time, and I'm not absorbing nutrients. Well, you might have some little buggers in your system that are eating them for you. They don't only stop you from absorbing the nutrients, they can actually eat those nutrients for you. It's crazy. So anyways, that's just a little side note. I had 3 parasites. Let me explain to you which ones they are. And really quickly, in case you're interested, I'll show you what the test looks like. This is my test, so I can share it. I don't know if you guys can see that at all, but it's very long and very comprehensive, and it gives me a ton of information. So that's all the stuff it screens for. It's like 4 or 5 pages. 4 pages. Okay, so the parasites that I had are Cryptosporidium, Cyclospora, and Endolamax nana. I can't even say that one. So Cryptosporidium and Cyclospora, I'm going to give you some information on them because it's fascinating. They are called intracellular parasites, and what that means is over a 7-day cycle, they go in and out of your cells. And what do you think that means? Damage and inflammation, and so many correlations and explanations as to why, even though I eat the perfect diet and do what I do, I haven't been like 100% yet. And so finding these, I was like, oh, thank God. In one way. On the other hand, it's like, oh man, this really sucks, right? But it's really interesting to me. So what they do is they kind of weave in and out of your cells. This is horrible. It's really, really damaging. You do not want these parasites in your system, okay? So not good. Endolamax nana is another one. It's like an amoeba. And so I have 3 primary that we would consider a primary infection, okay? Or primary target, all right? I also had Rhodotorula, which is a random yeast. By the way, guys, it's funny because some of the stuff that has showed up on my test has not showed up on like some of the other practitioners. Like they're like, I've never seen that one before show up on any of my clients before. I was like, you're welcome. I'm unique. But what's also interesting is it's funny because a lot of times the people that have like the worst tests in the world are the people who are the practitioners in that area. But if you think about it, it makes so much sense because it's like, well, why'd you get into it in the first place? Why are you so passionate about this stuff? It's because you have GI issues, you have hormone issues. So you go, you learn, you specialize. That way you can help other people. But in the meantime, you're treating yourself and you're working through your own problems. And gut health is like an onion. You have to slowly peel back the layers because like I said, they protect each other, or they protect themselves, but then they also kind of fuel each other. So once you find one, you're most likely going to find 1 or 2 or 3 other things down the road. And it is a process. And you want to do it gently and over this long-term sort of process so you're not, creating more stress on your body while you're eliminating them. By the way, guys, if you have any questions while I'm talking, I know this is kind of different, kind of cool information. So if anything pops up, just drop a note and I will answer questions while I'm talking. So Rhodotorula is a yeast. Not uncommon because yeast will feed, like I said, off bacteria and parasites and things like that. So if you have anything like a bacteria imbalance or a parasite, you're probably, whether it shows up on your test or not, have some yeast going on because they really like to feed off of it. So I had that, so we want to make sure we get rid of that. What's also interesting about the GI map is that it gives actual numbers for you. So you can see, it gives you a healthy range, and you can see like if you are like really close to that range, if you're sort of a little over it, or if you're like super high. So it's really great because if you choose to retest, depending on what you have, you can see, okay, did I go down? Is it gone? If it's not gone, did I go in the right direction? So it's a really detailed, really awesome. Hi, Barb. Really awesome test. So, all right, what else? Scrolling down here, we have something called the phyla ratio. So there's 2 types of bacteria that are in your gut, and that is gram-negative bacteria and gram-positive bacteria. And what you want to find is a ratio between the 2 that's less than 1. and the GI map does that for you, and so you can just look at the numbers and you don't have to figure it out. What's really interesting, again, I was unique. What's really interesting is my ratio was way above 1. And typically that's found in people that struggle with obesity and weight loss resistance. And so I go home and I'm like, honey, that weight I haven't been able to lose, it's because of this ratio. And he's like, you're not fat. And I'm like, be quiet. I'm going to blame it all on this ratio. So that was an interesting marker as well. There's some imbalance between those families of bacteria in my gut. And if you look in some of the other sections, there is clearly some bacterial dysbiosis or imbalance between the different bacteria. Some we would want higher, some we would want lower. So there's different segments of the test that you can kind of look at. Another marker that is really, really interesting is a beta-glucuronidase marker. Beta-glucuronidase tells you basically, it can kind of inhibit detoxification. So you don't want that number to be really high because then you're having issues detoxifying, which is no bueno. So really interesting, mine was very high, but you can treat that through a supplement, but I choose not to use the supplement because it can also lower your estrogen levels. And if you remember what I was saying at the beginning, historically my estrogen has been very low, and that's something I've been working on for several years to actually increase. So I didn't want to just jump in and be like, oh, this supplement will treat this. No, you have to be careful and know what they actually do, because I didn't want to affect my hormones in a negative way. So this is actually a marker that targeting everything else that I am targeting should naturally go down on its own. So it's actually something I'm not going to worry about. One of my favorite markers on this test is secretory IgA. Secretory IgA is an immune marker. So in your gut, you have this lining of epithelial cells that have little fingers on them, and they're called, those little fingers are called villi and microvilli. And basically, that is a physical defense system from food and toxins and all this kind of stuff that we don't want getting into our bloodstream. That's a physical barrier. Hi, Jessica. So there's also this chemical barrier that is the secretory IgA, and it's part of your immune system, and so it can also help block things that you don't want and sort of be part of that defense system. So you actually want your secretory IgA to be at a healthy level, above 500 when you're using the markers on this test, the numbers and the systems on this test. Anything below that is considered a suppressed immune system. Mine was very low, very, very low. So not as low as I've seen actually on some other tests, but it was low enough to be like, all right, we need to boost your immune system a little bit. So that's another really fascinating marker on this test. I love that marker because it just automatically gives you so much information about how your body's working. Then, and that makes sense, right? Because when we're talking about that epithelial cell lining, if you have parasites that are going in and out of that, it's causing damage, right? And then your immune system is located like directly underneath it, and you have all those B cells and T cells and macrophages and cytokines and all these kind of immune system cells right directly underneath that epithelial cell layer, that if there's damage and all this kind of stuff is going on, ultimately, your immune system can get suppressed when there's a lot of inflammation and issues happening in your gut. So, I mean, it kind of all makes sense. It can also happen when you've been on a pathogen protocol for a little bit of time. It can kind of suppress your immune system. So all the pieces sort of fit together and start making sense when you look at the big picture. One more marker, and by the way, I'm not telling you every single marker on this test because that would be like another hour, but I'm kind of touching the ones that I had an issue with. So I didn't have an issue with like every marker on the test, I promise. I'm only talking about the ones I did. So another marker that's really, really awesome, and I actually had to pay extra to get this marker, it's an optional add-on to the test, is called zonulin. The reason I chose to get a zonulin add-on is because more or less what zonulin is a leaky gut marker. So if you don't know what leaky gut is, those epithelial cells are connected by what's called a tight junction in between them. It's like a bridge that connects the two, a cellular bridge. And like I said, that's the physical barrier. And what you don't want to happen, hi Carrie, what you don't want to happen is something to break that junction, that barrier, that connection, because then you have what? You have a hole, right? And why do you have that physical barrier? To keep toxins and food sensitivities and all this stuff out. And if it breaks, what happens? It gets into your bloodstream and your immune system is right there, and it flares up your immune system, and you have an immune reaction, inflammation, and on and on and on and on. So zonulin, the reason this is an interesting marker is because zonulin's job is to actually, your gut is permeable on a day-to-day basis intentionally. Like it needs to be able to open and close those junctions as needed, right? And zonulin's purpose is to be able to open those tight junctions. That's what it does. So when this becomes a problem is when it's overstimulated and you don't want these junctions to be breaking or opening, and your zonulin levels are super high. And this can happen in cases of, for example, gluten. So one of the reasons that I always recommend people avoid gluten, whether they have celiac or documented sensitivity or not, is because it raises zonulin levels. It just does. Now, your ability to recover from that or respond to that or recognize it physically or whatever varies from person to person, but it just does that. So I don't view that as a good thing, so I recommend all my clients avoid that potential, besides the fact that it's genetically modified, and whole other conversation, another video for another time. But anyways, so gluten can raise your zonulin levels. That's one way that it can happen, but they can also be really, really high due to an infection, because like I said, their job is to open those tight junctions. So what happens is if you have a lot going on in there and you have an infection, your zonulin levels are going to get high to open those junctions to flush out all the toxins. So it's actually sort of trying to help you in terms of helping you detoxify and flush things out. So in my case, that's what we're looking at. It's a very high zonulin level, which surprised me. I'm like, I eat healthy, I focus on leaky gut, all this kind of stuff. But it makes sense, because what did I say at the beginning of the test? I have 3 parasites, 2 of which are intracellular parasites. What do intracellular parasites do except cause damage and inflammation? So what's your body going to want to do except raise your detoxification abilities in any way that it can, including zonulin, to flush it out of your system? So while we'd like that zonulin level to be high, I don't want to mess with it right now, because it's actually trying to help my body. So overall, those are all the negative things that I found on my test. I got some parasites. I got a little bit of a random yeast thrown in there. My bacteria ratios are a little out of whack. I have a low immune system, and then I have a super high zonulin level. So I'm going to work on it. So how am I going to do this? And let me just anticipate the questions. Sorry, I got to shift my my other foot's falling asleep now. I'm probably gonna do that like 4 times between this video. So what I do, let me just anticipate some of your questions. Kylene, you have 3 parasites. Why are you not getting an antibiotic? Great question. Okay. The reason I don't want to go through an antibiotic is for a couple reasons, and this is the same kind of reason that I didn't choose to do it for H. pylori as well. Like I said, with H. pylori, it can go into the gallbladder, so even if I had done a round, of antibiotics, it's short. First of all, it's really short, and a longer duration has a better chance of getting everything, and it may not have gotten everything in the gallbladder, and so I could have gotten reinfected, right? So that's one of the reasons I didn't choose to do it. So in this situation, wow, my zonulin is high. Wow. So the last thing I want to do is throw on a prescription drug that can cause more inflammation and damage to my gut lining, okay? So that's one reason that I don't want to do it. Another reason is because I already have some pretty serious bacterial imbalances going on, and some of the good bacteria that I need is low, and so is my immune system. So again, don't want to pile on an antibiotic, because not only is it going to get those parasites and the bad bacteria, it's also going to start wiping out my good bacteria. And here's the thing, we don't know at this point if you lose, like let's say it completely annihilates a strain of bacteria, like there is none of that left. I don't know if I can ever get that back again. Not to be dramatic, but diversity in your gut is key. So it's one thing if you have like a ton of strains of bacteria and they're just all kind of low and they just need support and encouragement to kind of proliferate in the right environment and the elimination of the pathogens. It's another thing if you start completely eliminating strains of bacteria in your body, like that's no bueno, okay? So since I'm already pretty low and I have a suppressed immune system and all this kind of stuff is going on, I don't want to use an antibiotic that would probably have to be pretty strong to eliminate 3 parasites, etc., etc. So that's kind of my answer for that. Now, when I work with my clients, I do give them the choice, of course, the choice. You can always choose if you want to go the medical route or the holistic route, and I present you with your options. I give you actually a letter that has, a doctor referral letter for you, all of that. So don't ever think that I'm, pushing, one way on my clients. I'm absolutely not. But I just do want to explain why I personally choose to not go that route. And that's my reason behind it. I don't want to wipe out the good bacteria that I have. I don't want to cause more inflammation. I certainly don't want to cause more damage. So what am I doing? That's a great question. I'm so glad you asked. what I'm doing is I am boosting my immune system, obviously. I'm trying to calm the inflammation and the leaky gut issues that we're talking about. Now, again, I don't want to mess too much with the zonulin because I think it's trying to help me. I want to address actually the issue, right? The issue, the main issue is the parasites, bacteria, and yeast imbalances right now. So we want to wipe out the parasites. That's the focus. So I will be on a 60-day, I am on a 60-day parasite protocol, and I use natural herbs for that. The ones I'm currently using are, it's actually herbs and bark. It's a formula of different herbs and bark from South America that have been shown to be anti-parasitic, all this kind of stuff. So I'm on a very specific protocol for 60 days. Now, in addition to those herbs and barks that are meant to target the parasites themselves, I'm also taking a product that is known to break that biofilm barrier that they live in. Remember, we talked about that spider web that protects them. Well, how do you kill guys? How do you kill these little guys if they are super protected in this biofilm? And, well, you can't really. I mean, you might get a few of them, but you want to make sure you get all of them if you're going to go through this process. So I also have another supplement that I'm taking that's really good at breaking up that biofilm. And it's funny because one of the ways I can tell that that supplement works well is it gets me to poop. Hey guys, I put it in the hashtag above, so we're going to talk about it today. And I mean, that's how I got the test results. It's a stool test. Did you know, by the way, I just learned this the other day. 60% approximately of your stool is bacteria. That's what you're pooping out. It's not all your food. You're actually pooping out a bunch of your bacteria, right? Because I mean, even if it's good bacteria, it has a life cycle. So, you know, bacteria, yeast, fungi, they all kind of grow, they eat, they die, they proliferate, you know, they have their thing. So you're pooping out like 60% of your poop is bacteria. Anyways, because I feel like part of the way I know that the biofilm disruptor that I take is working is when it really gets me pooping. So now you know about my day. So for 60 days, I'm going to be on the biofilm disruptor and the parasite protocol. For 60 days after that, I'm going to be focusing on the bacteria. And throughout the process, I take a very specific probiotic that is called Saccharomyces boulardii. It's actually a yeast, but it's a good yeast. It's one of the yeasts that you want. And so I'm actually taking that throughout, and that helps with the bacteria and the yeast and all that kind of stuff. So that's one of the probiotics I'm taking is specifically for that. That's also to help with my mucosal layer, all that jazz. So 60-day parasite protocol, 60-day bacterial protocol. So for the bacterial protocol, I'm taking that parasite supplement out, and I'm including another one, although the one that is during the bacterial protocol also overlaps the parasite protocol. And then I'm switching during the bacterial protocol, I'm switching the parasite supplement over to a bacterial supplement. The reason I'm not giving you names right now is because the last thing I want you to do is be like, I think I have a parasite or I think I have bacteria, so I'm gonna go buy this supplement. That is not the point of this video, and I do not support that. I do not condone that. You need to test. Do not guess what you have going on in your body. It's not okay. You can test and guess with food sensitivities and figure out and listen to your body about what foods work for you, but you do not need to be guessing about parasites, bacteria, yeast, or fungi in your body, okay? So let me just be very clear about that. You need to have the documentation, and you need to have somebody supervise you on protocols if you are not a practitioner yourself. So overall, that's what I'm doing. And then of course, I'm bringing in supplement support for my digestion as well. So one of the interesting things the difference between H. pylori and what's happening now, thank goodness I'm done with that, because when you have H. pylori, one of the things that you can't do is have coffee, which I try to avoid anyways, because avoiding it actually helps me have much easier periods. But one of the things you can't have is coffee, because it creates the acidic environment for the H. pylori to proliferate. And so you kind of have to create this non-acidic environment in order to target them and eliminate them and, get rid of them. And so I did that for that period of time. And you also, when you're using digestive enzymes, you can't have any with HCl in it, hydrochloric acid. So when your H. pylori is gone, though, this is the really interesting twist. When your H. pylori is gone, one of the best things you can do is optimize your hydrochloric acid, because optimizing your hydrochloric acid then creates the environment where bacteria cannot grow, and it prevents H. pylori from getting in there in the future. So it's kind of an interesting little tightrope you walk. As soon as you guys are clear of H. pylori, you want to optimize your levels of HCl. Basically what I mean by that is get to the max dose so that you create that happy and healthy acidic environment in your stomach, because when you don't have enough stomach acidity, you're going to have things like acid reflux. Believe it or not, a lot of acid reflux is due to low stomach acid, not too much. So you want to make sure that you have enough. So that's one reason, but it also, obviously, what's it in there for but to help you digest your food. So it's a great digestive aid as well. So you want to optimize that when you are sure that you don't have H. pylori anymore. So I'm optimizing my HCl. I've increased that. Oh, I forgot to tell you, one other marker on my test did demonstrate that I had a little bit of trouble, not a lot, but a little bit of trouble breaking down fats in my diet. So I did bring in an enzyme that's specific to that as well. And then colostrum, which is actually a milk derivative, but it really helps with boosting your secretory IgA and with your leaky gut. So that's another supplement that I brought in as well. So I mean, it sounds like a lot, but it's not really. It's like 60 days and some digestive support. So it's not really like, crazy. But anyways, it is a lot of information. It is still a lot to go on. But, the thing that I want to reiterate is two things. One, test, don't guess, okay? So don't be guessing if you have parasites. Don't be guessing, and don't be treating, all right? Two, I feel great, okay? And throughout this process, because you might be like, oh my gosh, she has 3 parasites. How is she living? Yes, I do. The reason I know that this is a problem, parasites are a big deal, okay? You want to get rid of those, period. The reason I know that it's still a problem, because I've been sleeping like a rock, I have so much energy, all this kind of stuff. Like, I feel so much better. My PMS is like amazing. In fact, you guys, just throwing this out there, I have a full PMS guide coming out soon to help you navigate and like eliminate PMS. Get excited, because it's awesome. It's got so many awesome tools I've personally incorporated. Like I said, like eliminating coffee. There's like one of the tips right there. Super easy, super basic. You're going to love it. Anyway, all these things in my life have improved from all these steps that I've taken, but there's still a few things that happen occasionally that I'm like, this isn't right. And so now I have the testing to kind of back it up and be like, oh, well, your digestion isn't consistent even though you eat all those vegetables, because you have 3 parasites that have these random ass life cycles, and they're kind of ruining it all for you, right? So you can do the best job in the whole world, and if they're in this part of your life cycle, you might still get some constipation. So it explains a lot of things, and I'm so glad that I invested in it and got it done and went ahead and checked up. So I would encourage you guys, if you have chronic fatigue like I did, if you have ongoing issues where you just are like GI issues where you're bloating out, or you're not pooping regularly, or anything like that, where you're like, I don't know, maybe this, or you've had like a history of, candida or UTI infections or sinus infections, or, chronic migraines, or like all of a sudden you've noticed like these shifts in your mood, like all of these things can be really related to your gut health. So it's really important, because the other thing about this is it's totally fixable. So it's not just nutrition. That's kind of how you maintain it in the long term, right? When you kind of fix all this, that's how you maintain it, is living a healthy lifestyle through your nutrition. That's how you feed the good microbiome. But ultimately, like, you have to know what's going on. And if we keep piling on Band-Aids, like if I was like, I'm just going to take this pill for acid reflux, I'm just going to take this pill for constipation, I'm just going to take this pill because I don't, I don't know, I'm going to go on what my doctor wanted me to go on in 2015. I'm going to be on an antidepressant for years, and all this kind of stuff. I'm going to take this antibiotic for this. By the way, guys, I do not want to bash the medical community. There are times where these things are necessary, but there are so many, and I love, like, let me just put this little caveat there. They're good at what they're good at, and I need them, and I want them, and I appreciate them. Like a year ago, caught my finger in a blender and almost cut the whole thing off, okay? It terrified me. They were amazing. They sewed me up. I was good. Never lost use. I have feeling in it. Incredible, okay? Awesome. I need them, okay? What sometimes they're not as good at is when it comes into a chronic disease state condition that is influenced primarily through nutrition and lifestyle and gut health related problems. And this is where I see clients, you know, that go and, or you see people maybe that you know that go to the doctor and feel miserable and their labs come back normal. And, you know, in our case last year when we took Keegan to 4 different doctors and they just said he was constipated, give him a Miralax flush, but they didn't figure out why. And then we find out he has an incredibly suppressed immune system. He had some bacteria. I mean, just all this stuff going on in his poor little gut. And I shared that with you guys then. And now we've naturally treated it and he feels amazing and he's happier and he's getting better grades and he's pooping fine. We wouldn't have known all of that had we not known what to look for. So I do think there's absolutely a balance and there needs to be more of a symbiotic relationship between, like, you know, the naturopathic and the medical community, because there's a place for both and we need both. But yeah, that's just kind of my 2 cents. Hi Kathy, hi Robert. Okay, so I'm wrapping up here and I just wanted to drop a couple fun little nuggets for you. Sort of related and sort of not related to all the stool test results that I just shared. One, I have a free meal plan. If you guys don't know, it is there. I know that it is hard to start a new lifestyle. I know that it is hard and very overwhelming to change your nutrition. So I've made it super easy. I give you a broken down meal plan with incredibly easy recipes that your whole entire family will like, including a recipe for brownies that kids just love, and also that you can freeze and keep for emergencies. And so I will post a link to that below if you want to download that. It's free, like I said. And then I also have a free Facebook group where you guys can kind of stay in touch with me more. You can ask your own questions. If you have topics that you want me to talk about, like if you're more interested in the hormones, if you have a nutrition topic that you, or a question that you're interested in, whatever it is, I just created in that group, it's called Stop Dieting and Live Your Life. I just did a video yesterday all about healthy food swaps for people that are traveling or busy or camping and they need something that they can bring that is healthy. So I gave some suggestions on swaps. I gave some suggestions of like brand upgrades, how to make something a little bit healthier, things like that. So that's over in there if you guys are interested in that. So again, I will drop a link to my meal plan below, and I will also drop a link to my free Facebook group, Stop Dieting and Live Your Life, below. If you guys are watching this on the replay, please click like, drop a comment below. Let me know if you have any questions. I do have to go. I'm sorry this was so long, but I do want to answer your questions. So if you have any, just drop them below and I will get to them. So